When the first settlers arrived in America, they found a land full of opportunity. God's country, rife with possibility, only limited by their reach and their ambition. Today, we reap the fruits of their labors, but we yearn for more. This is the land of our earliest pioneers and rebels, and that spirit of independence has been passed down for hundreds of years to us. As we see our inheritance squandered and sold off, we are presented with our own kind of opportunity, to build something new and to add to that great inheritance which we've been given, instead of simply taking from it what we can. For the new Ivy League, your old Glory Club chapter in New England, I'm here to invite you to our inaugural banquet this September 13th. Our states are famous for our autumn foliage and deep, dark winters. Where better to discuss the autumn of civilization and to make the connections we need to see us through the coming winter? Join us in the land of Yankees and Puritans, of the Tea Party, of Mark Twain, Robert Frost, and H.P. Lovecraft. Whether you're a member of the Old Glory Club, or you've just found your way here, between hearing our speakers and connecting with your fellow attendees, I know this will be a night to remember. This is our land of opportunity. This is our chance. Will you be able to say, I was there at the beginning? And if you can't make it, if we're just too far, well, then you'll be hearing from our brothers in the other chapters very soon about their own events. Tickets are on sale now. Contact your regional liaison for more information. Thank you.
All right, yes, of course, that is our good friend, Mr. Sunahaster, up in the new Ivy League, promoting the event that those guys have got going on in just a few short days. So if anybody is in the New England area and would like to meet up with a bunch of fellow friends next weekend, please reach out, and we will be sure to get you guys a ticket while there are still some left. So contact your presidents, contact your guys in your chapters. If you guys are members of the OGC, we'll get you over there. All right. Before we get started with the stories of today, let's get around with the rest of the shilling that we always got to do. So first of all, everyone head on over to Axios Remote Fitness and Coaching. Get yourself shredded for the end of White Boy Summer, heading on into the fall here. So link down in the description below. Also, if you guys want your caffeine fix, head on over to Fox and Sons Coffee, proud sponsors here of the OGC. And then finally, as ever, because we here at the OGC are fans of Big Tobacco, please get your nicotine fix with ALP nicotine pouches. I actually just ordered a restock on my stock of ALP. Right now, it should be here in a couple of days, so that'll be great. Alrighty, let's welcome our panel for this evening. Mr. Pete Q, you are back once again. How are you, my friend?
I'm here. I promise you, I'm not the one chewing.
Yes, yeah, sir. It's okay. Back. All right, Mr. Fahrenheidt, welcome back to the show, sir.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
All right, excellent. And we got Mr. John Fieldhouse joining us tonight. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, sir.
All righty. Gentlemen, let's just jump right in to the topics for this evening. So the big story of the week, we covered this months ago, been tracking this one. This was actually one of the early executive orders in the Trump administration, and one of his campaign promises they put on his Agenda 47, if people remember those videos back then, but designating the drug cartels as terrorist organizations. And now we finally have some of these executive orders bearing fruit this week, because the United States actually launched a drone strike on a drug runner, one of these cocaine, dinghy boats in the Caribbean, and killed 11 narco terrorists, allegedly. So what are our initial thoughts on this one, guys? I mean, I'll just say from the start, if we are to start drone striking people, I would much rather it be in the United States' interest to stop our population of being overflowed with a bunch of drugs than drone striking random Middle Eastern countries or Israel. So at the start, if we're going to be dropping bombs on people, the only country the United States has the right to be at war with, as far as I'm concerned, is Mexico. So what do we think at the start of that, fellas?
I'll definitely have a lot to discuss on this, but my short answer is I'm perfectly A-OK with it. All indications is this is a vessel And again, it looks like a large outboard motor vehicle. It's not a deep sea ocean going vessel, even though it's going deep sea by itself, which is already a good example of probable cause. We know where it came from. We know approximately where it's going. Based on that intel alone, I'm perfectly fine with shooting it and killing them. My biggest issue with this whole thing is really the fact that the U.S. media didn't even ask basic questions about that, such as what units were engaged with us. How do you know who was on this ship? What did you do for positive identification? Was this actually a drone or was this some other kind of aircraft or whatnot? And the basic kind of who, what, when, where, why of basic reporting that you would teach in an elementary school English class, the American media couldn't be bothered to ask.
Yeah, I guess if I was a reporter asking questions and I was a real reporter, I'd also be asking things like, okay, so is this going to be ongoing? What are your plans, if any, to take on, these narco terrorists on land? Do you expect to win this war? Because to me, you like to see it. You like to see the government doing something, but is this just optics? Is this something that's going to be, done a couple times and then abandoned? I think that it's been shown that because of the bureaucracy that exists, a war on drugs or a war on anything isn't won. So is this multi-generational? Is this the beginning of something that's going to be, like GWAT, where it's just going to pop back up again? It'll be forgotten. One administration will ignore it. I mean, really, what is this? Because the way I look at it is they're so dug in like a tick in Mexico. The only way that you could destroy them is you would have to flatten Mexico and have nothing left. I just don't see it. I mean, you legalize one thing in the United States, they move on to something else. You legalize it's not the drugs. It's not the guns. It's not even the human trafficking. It's the fact that they exist. So what do we do about that?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely opens up to a multifaceted problem across the board, right? I mean, I guess what we're looking for here, and some people are pointing this out in the chat, is what is the actual wing condition of this, right? So if we just want to blow up a couple dinghies with a dozen guys that are carrying a couple 100 pounds of coke, and we want to do that every once in a month, saying, oh, look, the administration is doing something to combat the war on drugs here in the United States. Well, I mean, this is only just a minuscule part of this, right? I mean, we have trafficking in fentanyl from places like China. We've got our own national park system that have all these illegal grow operations inside federal land in the United States. We've got issues with Tucker Carlson has pointed this out with his excellent documentary, his report, what's going on in Maine with things like the actual legal marijuana industry is involved with organized crime that way. And I mean, short of basically just doing regime change in every single country south of the United States and replacing them with Bukele's, I mean, what really can you do? And I don't know, maybe that's worth having a discussion about, partnering with something like El Salvador to see what you can do with stuff like this. But, it does just point to a multi-year project and not something that, oh, let's drop a couple bombs and, go home and say we won the war, folks.
The simple fact that this was even discussed about by the president and at official press conferences of the U.S. government tells us more than anything that the U.S. government wants the world to know this happens, and that message is probably the most important thing, or most important part of what happened. If the goal was just to eliminate a ship, you could just kill it, and nobody's going to go bothering to ask, what that Navy flotilla is doing down there, just as the media has not asked any pertinent questions so far.
From a power political perspective, I am personally not against the United States doing its usual bag of tricks of regime change, particularly in Venezuela, but throughout all of Latin America, particularly because maintenance of the Monroe Doctrine and the elimination of any geopolitical resistance in Southcom is how the United States bases its geopolitical dominance, right? But if blowing up this ship is a sort of message to the narco interests that have started making deals with foreign powers like China, or maybe even oblique deals with Russia or something like that. I think this is part of American reassertion over its own, should be its own sphere of influence, its own backyard through the Monroe Doctrine. So, I mean, if yes, as is said in Sicario, this is a demand issue. This is the issue of people in the United States wanting to purchase this. But like the thing is you can't blame the consumer market for purchasing things. Really, I think this is a issue of distributors. This is an issue of the networks that exist within the United States, largely foreigners, some homegrown, that distribute these goods within the United States, and the fact that they are not all just simply arrested. I don't care about your if it was just one little baggie of weed, right? If you wanted to really purge this from your society, cleanse this from your society, it would just be total crackdown, martial law, arrest anything that, burn and all this other stuff. But, as Pete said earlier, you just legalize one thing, you legalize another thing. And until that point, the pretext of any war on drugs just kind of seems silly and stupid. So why don't we just be open and honest about this, that this is just America power politicking in Latin America? I have no problem with that.
Well, I mean, there's a lot to unpack in what you just said there, Paul. I mean, I think one place to start with this discussion is just addressing the simple thing right now that, the stupid tagline like libertarians have all the time. It's like, well, you can't legislate morality. I'm like, this has just been proven to be 100% false at this point and complete bullshit. All right. Giving people the free market or freedom of choice with things like drugs and legalizing, marijuana, among many others, it's just been a disaster all across the board wherever it's been tried. It certainly is one of the hugest stains that's on my voting record, I will say, because I remember, many, many years ago, I voted for legalization back in my state. And this is definitely one of the things that I regret significantly on this one. But with things that have, the legislation of the pornography debate, saying like, oh, you need to verify your age. And you see like the rates of all these sites have just dropped down by like hundreds of percentage points in some areas. You absolutely can just have the force of the state come down and say, oh no, we're just going to make this stuff illegal, period. Like that can be done. So we put that aside, right at the start of this, saying, well, if we really did want to go full war on this war on drugs thing, it is possible for you to do. Now the next question comes, is this the main focus, or should the main focus actually be what you're suggesting here, Paul? It's just power politics in the region, which I'm also okay with. As far as I'm concerned, this entire hemisphere belongs to the United States, and we should be exerting our energy to make sure it moves in the way of our interests. This ties into other stories like I mean, that I was going to say, I think you make it great. Is this a new kind of we're taking over the hemisphere? Is that we'll eventually talk about Venezuela? Is this the the kind of new global order that people have been talking about, where Russia gets their piece and China gets their piece, and and we get our piece, and we basically manage those and trade with the others? Or I mean, if that's the way we're going, I mean, it at least makes the world a lot smaller than it is right now. Because it's like Thomas always says, there's no third world right now. There's no it's basically globalism and the resistance against it. So anything that would make the world a little bit smaller would be at least a step in the right direction, as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, I certainly agree on that front. I mean, this ties into many, many other stories, and I can't help but think that they cannot be connected in such a way. I mean, we've covered the story a couple times on the show before, but it made another big resurgence this week. We were talking about this with Argentina last time, but now with Peru, where these giant Chinese shipping fleets that are collecting every living organism in the entire ocean and just poaching all of the food outside of the waters of, it was Peru this week, it was Argentina a few weeks before that. I mean, again, that's right in America's backyard here. I mean, the distance from the United States to Peru is shorter than the distance from the United States to like Great Britain or something, for example. This is like literally, just a couple hundred miles, 1,000 miles south from the United States. It's just right here. This just simply cannot be allowed if we are to be exerting our influence in our hemisphere.
I'd say fisheries are probably going to become much more important strategically as the century goes on, just because it's one of the last large untapped sources of animal protein.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, but I wanted to speak to something that Pete was talking about earlier, particularly with the sort of the new multipolarity idea, and this raises a very interesting question that I think we should all I've certainly been thinking about it recently. Is it's like, what, how should I say? The United States is currently at present a global hegemon. That's what it is at present, right? Whomever is in charge of the United States and whomever's in charge of the United States aside, the United States is a global hegemon. And so the question then becomes, right? The question then becomes, because moments of of unipolar global hegemony do not come around very often. And historically, they don't go away very quickly. Right. So the question then becomes, that I think Pete raised, and I think we should start asking ourselves is that this, Venezuela thing kind of points at is, what does American hegemony look like? What should it look like? Should it continue? Or should it be dismantled from within or something like that? These are the questions, particularly from the foreign policy angle, that we need to start asking.
Yeah. And hegemony in the Western Hemisphere versus the world as a whole are not the same thing. And even as somebody who wants to see a curtailment of American hegemony, we still have every right, or we have every responsibility to act as a hegemon in this hemisphere.
Which also, let's not forget, I mean, this hemisphere has been horribly neglected over the past several decades at least. I mean, it's just been literally handed over to the drug cartels until somebody like Bukele came around. I mean, when was the last time you really had American foreign policy dictated in the region, aside from like the Contras?
NAFTA.
Well, I mean, and that's like a different kind of action. But I mean, so what? We had like a couple military sanctions over Venezuela back when like Obama was in office, but other than that, I mean, it's kind of just been left there like by itself. Like the United States should be propping up characters like Bolsonaro in Brazil, like Bukele, just trying to recreate this stuff all throughout the region. That seems way more in my interest than doing any of this world building nonsense for Israel that we've been doing in the Middle East for the last several decades.
Exactly.
So, I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on here. And I think another part of this, which you were alluding to, Mr. Fahrenheidt, is the actual problem with the drugs as well, which is a huge issue in the United States. The number of drug deaths just goes up year over year. The amount of people who have been on SSRIs or other kinds of medications, not just like hardcore drug use, is just skyrocketing up because we just have such a sick population here at home. So there not only needs to be a revival of the American people to address the issues of why people are seeking out deaths of despair with like drugs and alcohol and just numbing themselves. But there also needs to be an actual dedication to curtailing the supply of these things, as well as fixing our own problems that we have at home. And then also just bringing stability into the entire region, not just for, the crime and the human trafficking issues, but also just the natural resources as well. They're just right here in America's backyard. I mean, people why don't we just get into the Venezuela stuff right now? I mean, obviously, it's no secret here. Venezuela is a rich country in oil. We were making reference to the great fisheries that we have on the Pacific side of South America and the United States, and Canada. These are all things that we need to be looking towards preserving, because it looks like there's plenty of other countries on the world that have their eyes set on it. Actually have a clip of Marco Rubio here who's talking about the strike. So let's listen into what Mr. Rubio said.
The United States has long, for many, many years, established intelligence that allow us to interdict and stop drug boats. And we did that. And it doesn't work. Interdiction doesn't work because these drug cartels, what they do is they know they're going to lose, 2% of their cargo. They bake it into their economics. What will stop them is when you blow them up, when you get rid of them. So they were designated as what they are. They are narco-terrorist organizations. So the same information and the same intelligence mechanisms with maybe a higher focus was used to determine that a drug boat was headed towards eventually the United States. And instead of interdicting it on the president's orders, he blew it up. And it'll happen again. Maybe it's happening right now. I don't know. But the point is, the president of the United States is going to wage war on narco-terrorist organizations. This one was operating in international waters, headed towards the United States to flood our country with poison. And under President Trump, those days are over.
Look, under a managerial regime, I mean, listen to what he just said. Okay. He said they bake in 2%. Okay, aren't they readjusting their economics now to losing a boat? I mean, he basically is like, oh, well, these stopping them in water didn't help. Now we just have to kill them. Well, are we describing GWAT? Look, I'm not saying you don't declare war. You don't make this a priority. But if you don't have a plan to actually win this, well, then you're just jerking off.
Yeah. I was going to say, the idea is if you actually kill the crew, I mean, it's sort of like the concept or the use of a sniper on the battlefield. Snipers can be useful, but for the most part, they inflict negligible casualties. But if you make it so dangerous for somebody to run around, act in a leadership position, or to be exposed in a particular area, you can pin down entire battalions of troops with one or two snipers. So I don't know, but I'm asserting that's probably his idea, that if they can kill them, that's definitely going to make it much harder to get people on those boats, because dying is rather permanent. But as you said, from an economic standpoint, does that work? It depends, how long until you actually automate boats? I mean, we have, everybody's using drones to include the cartels, an unmanned ship or boat. It's not terribly hard to conceive of. So yeah, what you said is it works until they figure out how to, ship things without human beings at the wheel.
Well, sorry, go ahead, Mr. President.
Well, I mean, I guess the other point I have with this too is, to what degree do we even have really information on all these organizations, and what the manpower is like? Where is command and control? I mean, allegedly, we've heard many times that a bunch of the heads of these cartels, oh, well, they're just living on their giant compounds in the middle of the desert, or we literally have satellite images of them. So it's like, okay, so why are you blowing up the ships when you could just I don't know, drop a Predator missile on, Sinaloa cartel HQ and just take out a bunch of people? I mean, it's I don't know. There's questions here.
Yeah, well, the very short answer is we don't know, partly because organizations, if you're not an established, corporate or, collective organization that's formally established with a public facing leadership, in general, you're not an actual organization. Most criminal operations are networks as opposed to, established organizations. So there's a lot of conflict within the organizations. They're not actually operating in a managerial command and control fashion. They have some hierarchy of leaders, almost like you would have in feudalism, who can act titularly as the senior most people for directing things, but they don't generally do a whole lot of controlling or directing of resources on a day-to-day basis. It's as you said, it's a lot of the problems is we tend to take the managerial approach, which applies to armies, and apply it to criminal organizations, and very often it's no, they don't really function that way. It's networks of people who may or may not even identify with that association. And we're trying to put a formal label on something that's inherently informal.
No, precisely. And I mean, the thing of this is too, is number one, I always find it funny that Marco Rubio looks like Manuel Noriega. It's like we put anyway.
He kind of does look like him, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. The friggin' Latin America or specifically Central American strongman physiognomy. Anyway, but the point of this is that this is not a technology problem. This is a policy and a vision problem, right? That's what this is. It's not that the United States doesn't have a capacity to interact with and understand networks that are not managerial, right? We have plenty of intelligence, plenty of law enforcement agencies, plenty of people that understand how to think this way, that can step outside of a managerial way of thinking, right?
You have more faith in them than I do.
Yeah, fair enough, right? But the point of this is it's like, it's not that we don't have people like this in places, or we don't have sub departments or sub offices or things like that. What this is ultimately is this is a failure of vision, and this is a failure of policy. What, like Pete keeps bringing up GWAT. What was the whole point of GWAT? No one knows. No one can tell you what GWAT was. You know, I've heard someone try to explain is that GWAT was a gambit to try to make remake the Middle East so that the United States wouldn't have to involve itself anymore. If that was the case, it failed utterly, right? But that wasn't communicated. This is the problem, right? There is a disconnect between the top levels of these Westphalian nation states, between the senior political leadership and the actual goals of the policy and the people that, you know, elected them, that they are theoretically responsible to, right? So again, I'm not against my betters making policy decisions that don't involve me because I'm not in the room. I'm not against that, but ultimately this is the schizophrenia that is induced by this system, right? Is that you have a senior executive office that, you know, and this is partially incentivized by the use of WMDs, forcing mass lying on the part of governments, right? To, you know, out of this attempt to keep the world from blowing up, but it's not exactly the Cold War anymore. So the same geopolitical pressures are not present, but the habits are still kind of there, and they're starting to break a little bit. The Trump administration, at the very least, resembles somewhat of a break from these 20th century president, or at least these latter half of the 20th century presidencies. But ultimately, for this particular issue, for Venezuela and for this drug boat, it is a failure of vision and a failure of policy. What is the end goal? What are you trying to achieve? Are you trying to make the flow of drugs into the United States zero? Are you trying to manage the flow of drugs? Are you trying to reduce the flow of drugs? Because all three of those have three different courses of action to accomplish, right? Are you trying to regime change all of the people you don't like in Central America? Are you trying to eliminate the cartels, you know, full stop? What are, you know, like, and what cost are you willing to pay to do that? How many resources do you have available? Are you going to communicate that as you're doing it? Or is it just going to be this, like, you know, thing you keep behind closed doors? Or ultimately, is this like a system that, you know, and again, I've said before, maybe there are models that they have that I don't have access to, that we don't have access to. Maybe they're dealing with information that we don't have, right? Always, I think it's good to give leadership, it doesn't matter who they are, the benefit of that doubt, right? But ultimately, what is the point here? Is this just, we want to keep the system as running and maybe blow up a few boats to make ourselves look good to our base? Like, I don't understand what this is. This is not a technology issue. This is a failure of vision, a failure of policy, and a failure of accurately communicating with that to garner legitimacy for it. And that's what I think, you know, Mr. Rubio here has demonstrated.
Yeah. And to that point, like I said earlier, you know, this kind of act of violence, the fact that they're actually showing it publicly is intentional, which means the demonstration of force is on purpose. The problem with doing that is if it comes across as you don't have a coherent strategy, a coherent, you know, criteria that you're using to make decisions, then you look, you know, like the blind idiot who's flailing about, which is, you know, in some ways worse than anything as a hegemonic power, how you could be presented.
You know, we have to remember, I'd started saying this before, got sidetracked. You know, we live under a managerial regime that's existed for about 100 years. You know, we talk about dismantling it and we see you don't even know where to start. You know, believe it or not, That's exactly what the cartels are. They're managerial regimes that have existed for a very long time. If they wanted to try to dismantle it, if somebody inside their system wanted to try to dismantle it, or if a bunch of people decided, where would they start? Yet our managerial regime, which we don't know how it runs, who runs it, what's going on, is going to dismantle their managerial regime. No, we're just going to end up, we're going to feel good killing some some people who are bringing some stuff over the border, and nothing's going to get solved.
Yeah.
Unless there is this grand, unless some genius has this grand plan where that they're not telling us about, and I'm sure they're not telling us about it. But if you're going to tell me some genius has a grand plan to do this, I don't believe you.
Yeah. On that note, I mean, Van Crevel talked about this about 30 years ago, and he essentially said that major nation states would continue stumbling about for a long period until they actually adapted, and that's exactly what seems to be happening here.
Yeah, and it's funny you talk about that. I was talking to someone earlier today about the 21st century crisis of the Westphalian nation state, and one of this friend of mine's solutions. He thinks that the problem with nation states is a problem of scale, right? It's given 21st century political economies and cyber as sort of a new layer of reality, the same way that air is was a new layer of reality in warfare. Now the cyber realm is a new layer of reality in warfare that you need to have a presence in. You need to be able to fight. There's an issue of attempting to maintain nation states at their current scale, or if not at their current scale, perhaps at their current geographical boundaries, right? And he points to things like Singapore, other city-state solutions as a drastic scale down within these sort of hulking zombie entities as a way forward. But I don't, again, like I don't know necessarily if that's advisable for a polity like the United States, because hegemony, the only thing worse than being the hegemon is giving up hegemony, right? Because it tends not to go very well for you, right? Yeah. So I don't know what the answer is here.
Yeah, not to mention the issue is how much does this really apply to us? We talked about the scale of nation states. I mean, we're definitely a little bit bigger than Denmark or France. I mean, the reality is the United States was founded as a federation, a confederacy of independent states, and somehow turned into an empire. And the nation state process or part along the way we attempted to do, or we did it somewhat before being pulled in different directions. So it's almost like the whole issue is scale. It's like there's scale for countries, and then the United States and Russia are just completely different. Even China doesn't have these issues because something like 90% plus of the population are ethnic Han. But U.S. and Russia have this issue that really both are multicultural, multiracial, multi-confessional empires that in a world that you're not allowed to call yourself an empire anymore.
Yeah, all excellent points all around, gentlemen. So, well, at the very least, well, I think we're all pretty much in agreement that at the very start of this, none of us are against the United States blowing up a cartel boat. The thing that we're all concerned about, though, is what is the overall strategy of this, and where are we going to go from here from this one? And I don't know, maybe they don't have a grand plan. Maybe they do have a grand plan. Maybe their grand plan is going to fail. Maybe they are testing certain things to get data points on potentially developing a grand plan. Whatever it is, I will say this at the start, though. I like this better than the status quo of, we're just going to let Latin America do its own thing and just be entirely ruled by various drug cartels. And, that's literally it. One of the things we do have to praise Trump for is just completely shutting down the southern border, and crossings are basically at zero. So, I mean, that's definitely a start. But hopefully over the next couple of years and the next couple of months, we will see a focusing on the whole Latin America, South America, as opposed to the Middle East, which I think if you were just to poll every American, majority of people would be totally down for that. It's like, yeah, get us out of that part of the world. Fuck that place. Let's go over here and actually work on something in our backyard. Wouldn't that be nice?
And again, just to repeat what I said, I mean, blowing up speedboats is cool, and I'm okay with that, but let's not confuse doing cool shit with doing effective things.
Yeah, it's very, very well said. Yeah. All right. So, turning our attention into other international news this week, we got a kind of a heavy international show this week. We must continue to look at what is going on in the UK and in the rest of the Anglosphere right now. So, the Raise the Colors campaign has been moving at breakneck speed throughout the United Kingdom right now. If people aren't familiar with this, in response to the continued pressure brought upon them by their own state governments who hate them. The English, the Scots, the Welsh, the Northern Irish, everyone are just putting up local flags everywhere they possibly can. And in some places, this is leading to clashes with migrants in hotel housing or wherever, right? And it's gotten even to the point now where many Englishmen have just been thrown in jail for protesting. And at the same time, migrants who are basically getting away with some kind of sexual assault and or rape of young English girls every single day at this point. The state is just letting those people go free, and the two-tiered system of justice is being shown on display in the United Kingdom is just getting out of control right now, and people are out in the streets, as it were. So
yeah, it's really hard for the average American who's just casually coming into us just to see how absurd it is. Because again, that red flag is the flag of England proper, as opposed to the UK as the whole. And people are, being called hate criminals for putting it up, which is the flag of that constituent country within the United Kingdom. But people are also being called, criminals for putting up the Union Jack, which is the flag of the United Kingdom as a whole. So, I mean, literally, they're putting up the flag of their own country is considered a borderline crime, which is the ultimate example of the absurdity of a state that's at war with its population that says its own symbols are criminal.
Yeah, I don't know if I said this last week, if we talked about this last week. I don't remember. I don't remember yesterday. But something that I'll invoke Thomas again. He said, we have ways of dealing with things, with a lot of what we're dealing with that Europe doesn't. Europe being smaller, Europe having a lot of those countries having a purely homogenous majority for now.
Or until 5 minutes ago.
Yeah. But really, when it comes down to it, the way these countries are acting, especially the way the British government is acting towards the English and the Scottish, there's really only one way this ends. And I mean, and it's a very famous speech by Enoch Powell, the title of a very famous speech by Enoch Powell. And one side is going to have to decide that they want to win that, because that's the way this is going. That's the only way that this is going to be handled. And I'm not even talking about England. I'm talking about pretty much every country in Europe that has been overrun with these, with these bioweapons.
Just like when we discussed we read on your show that time, the essay by Martin Van Creveld, he makes it fundamentally clear that migration is an act of war. It is about the displacement of the native population with a new population. And throughout all of human history, it was understood as an act of war. And it's just now, post 91, that the world tries to pretend that is not the case.
Well, the same security concerns that the United States is looking at and dealing with in the 21st century, you're also having in Europe, right? And Europe, the various European countries and the European people of these various countries have entirely different security concerns from the United States. And I see this sort of nationalist backlash within continental Europe, within Britain and the rest of these countries. I see this as, in some ways, a sort of immune response. It turns out that you can only, cow a people for so long and humiliate them so much before you start seeing some kind of backlash for this. I see this as an immune response, and it's certainly an upswell of popular popular sentiment. And I've even heard possibly that the Tory party in the UK is looking at entirely the Tory party has done this like 7 or 8 or 9 times throughout its history. It's looking at entirely reinventing itself, kicking out its current, black woman head and replacing it with some, old school white guy, in order to take advantage of this anti-migrant surge, which is something that my European politics friends tell me that every single right-wing party in Europe is going to have to deal with. Right, the right wing in Europe is the vestige of Christian democracy, which was developed after World War II. It's usually in a handshake with social democracy. It's similar to our false dichotomy here. For them, it's Christian democracy or social democracy, and it's functionally the same set of policies with a few minor quibbles. But all of the quote unquote conservative or Christian democratic parties in Europe are going to have to deal with this, and these parties will either reinvent themselves to be more like European versions of kind of the Trump wave. Like I hope, honestly, much as I hate the Tory party, I would much rather my friends in the UK live under a not nightmare state than make the people who have made their lives horrible accountable for it. Like, because in all honesty, oftentimes those are two mutually exclusive choices. I would rather them have better lives. And so if the Tory party, takes this cue to capture onto this public sentiment, you'll probably see them just totally sweep the polls. And Lord knows, maybe they'll even live up to it. Maybe they'll even do something about it. I don't know. But ultimately, this is something that every European country is going to have to deal with, because I think Pete said this on one of our conversations recently, is it's like once this succeeds in one place in Europe, it's going to be like 1848. It's going to spread everywhere. So
that certainly feels right to me. Just my gut feeling and instincts are telling me it's just once one of these dominoes falls, it's just there's just no way that it's not going to pick up in other places. I mean, as soon as France does it, Germany's going to do it. As soon as Germany does it, England's going to do it, and so on and so forth.
One of the nice things of parliamentary states versus our model is you do actually get a little bit more variety in terms of parties. The UK at least has 3 major political parties. It would be nice to have, one more choice. But even then, like I said, the Christian Democrats, the center-right Social Democrats, they're still, facing a lot more insurgent challenges from new populist right-wing and identitarian parties, which in some ways are reforming some of the older parties, the establishment parties. It's also allowing, some of these new parties to come out of nowhere, merge with others, and actually take a large chunk, to the point that, reform has some representation in Parliament now, whereas UKIP, for all of its cool optics, never went anywhere outside of the MEP or the European Parliament. So it's interesting to see how things are happening. The one point I was going to say, you said they have security issues like us. Well, in some ways they have significantly worse, because Europeans largely stopped breeding, or they're breeding at a much slower rate. So the native population is just not producing enough children, for anything close to replacement levels, which means despite, we can discuss whether or not you should have 20 kids each or not, but it means that the population is, much more vulnerable to replacement by migration, just as we, Van Crevel discussed.
Yeah, the demographic issue is a whole other angle that we could look at this, both in the United States and in Europe, because I'm wondering what the conditions are that are causing that. I mean, yes, you could make a theological argument. It's punishment from God because the people abandon God, and that's certainly probably not false in a large amount of cases. But that's also not where it begins and ends, right? There's probably financial considerations. There's probably cultural considerations. There's probably the fact that, like, in the UK, you live under this horrific panopticon nightmare world, where you can't have a butter knife without getting arrested by the cops.
There are hundreds of people imprisoned every year in the UK for tweets.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, so maybe if you live in an environment like that, you're not exactly, and you have any sort of political instinct, whatever, right? Maybe you're not exactly motivated to have kids the way you would have been if you were in a stable society that seemed to care about you.
Yeah, the destruction of organic society definitely is not good for raising families at any scale. Religiosity correlates really closely to birth rates, but it's not really clear what's cause and effect there. So it's true the less religious people have less kids, but why is not entirely clear.
Well, the birth rate thing also, Yaki said that as soon as mass migration starts into a country, the native birth rates go down. There's a couple of reasons for that. One, it's just gotten more expensive. I mean, the price of everything has gone up. I mean, how many times have we said on this show, if you want to reduce the cost of real estate, you deport 50 million people. If you want to reduce the price of anything, you deport 50 million people.
Yeah.
I think there's also a metaphysical factor there too, that I'm not going to get into now. That would be an hour and a half, probably more. But yeah,
I agree with you on all that points, and I would say if you talk to anybody who's in right-wing populist politics from the UK, especially just the loaders eaters is a good work safe version, and they'll talk about it incessantly, just how much the cost of housing has gone up and how much faster the cost of housing has gone up just for millennials in the last decade plus, to the point that you could be a young educated professional man who basically financially will never be able to own a house in the United Kingdom and nowhere near where he's actually going to have to live for his job. And we're talking about some of the most educated people in what was the most wealthy country in the world, a century ago, which is basically, just a satellite of the most wealthy empire in the world right now, which is the United States, and they still can't afford a house. Rich people in rich countries can't afford a house. I mean, that tells you have a broken economic system. And exactly.
We just have reports just this week come out in the United States for the first time ever. There are new home buyers who are the age of 70 than new home buyers at the age of 30, which is just absurd. It's like literal clown world going on here. That the eldest members of your population are the ones buying all the houses. It's like, holy shit.
And again, when people talk about all the issues that go along with not having replacement birth rates, again, there's arguments there that we don't need to rehash. But one of the biggest issues is you can't have a healthy aging population. Historically, when you have a population that's doing well that doesn't have a growing birth rate at that moment, usually it's because of war, natural disaster that killed a lot of people. Well, it also kills old people disproportionately, which, as I'm getting older, I'm not really a fan of that. But younger people are the source of energy and innovation in a society. And, exactly what you said, you have more over 70 than under 30 home buyers. That is not a good sign of health for a population.
I mean, the old should only ever stick around to help out the young was a profound statement that has surely been lost on many Western people, particularly those that spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to extend their lives an extra 6 months. But we don't need to go down that one. I mean, I will say one more thing about the birth rate, which we've talked about this show as well, is that it's not just about the economics as well, but when you flood your nation or your hometown, your area with foreigners who don't look like you, I think that this is a part of women's deep psyche, just from like the monkey brain from our ancestral past, where for the vast majority of human history, if you suddenly got a huge influx of foreigners, that means that your home, your town, your nation has just been conquered by a foreign force, and it's probably not a good time for you to be having kids. This is just a time of deep instability and not safe time for women. And I think that is something that is in their psyche that they even see in their own time as well.
Migration is war from a sociological perspective.
Yeah, very true.
And also, really, you can solve a lot of this too, especially when it comes to like housing and things like that, where if you just pass a law saying that if you are any company, any nonprofit with X amount of assets under management or X amount of assets, you cannot buy, residential property. And if you own residential property right now, you're forced to sell it at market value. Not going to undercut you. You have to sell it at market value. There's no reason why whole towns should be. There's no reason why BlackRock and Blackstone. People are like, oh, it's Blackstone. Well, yeah. Well, do you know how much of Blackstone stock BlackRock owns? It's both. One hand washing the other. Just make them get rid of it.
Yeah, don't make care. They shouldn't own houses.
Yeah, I mean, again, like so many things that we're talking about, it's just I don't know if other guys can relate to this. I'm sure many people in the chat might be able to, especially because they spend a bunch of time with their family members over Labor Day weekend here. But I just grow so tired of the very basic bitch, like normie conservative talking points about how, oh, well, we just really need to focus on the midterms right now. We can't deal with any of these big, giant overarching issues of our civilization that are about to cripple us literally for forever, the greatest thing that has ever happened in the history of the planet, because we got to worry about the 2026 midterm elections. And it's like, guys, like, just fuck off. I'm so done with these retarded arguments of focusing on the next election. It's like, dude, we're talking about civilizational issues that we have to tackle right now. They're going to take decades, if not like the rest of all of our lives right here. I'm just not focused on like this next election as the end all be all of why we're involved in politics.
Yeah. The house is on fire. Put out the fire. And I'm much more likely to vote for you if you put the fire out.
Yeah, really.
Precisely. I really do think that the issue with this is just the zombie of mass democracy is the issue here, right? Like that's the only like legitimate official legal way of getting power, and it's really hard to break out of that trap once you're there. And when you're there, it's like what disincentivizes your elites in a society, your wealthy people, your legacy landowners, your elites. What disincentivizes them from pumping X many millions of dollars into BlackRock so they can sit in all of those houses as a protected asset category, and those houses go either unfilled or they're like charged they're leased out to some property management company and they charge exorbitant rentals and stuff like that. It's like, well, how do you disincentivize your elites from functionally screwing over the middle and importing in infinity foreigners, right? How do you disincentivize them from basically just selling out your nation so that they can protect their personal wealth? This occurred in Italy during the later parts of the Roman Empire. This is, as opposed to Gaul. Gaul had a homegrown aristocracy that was kind of a holdover from the days of Julius Caesar. There was a sort of Gallic aristocracy. It wasn't dominated by Italians the way Italy was. But in Italy, roads fell into disrepair. And the thing is that the rich people of your society, your elites, they can insulate themselves from it, whether they consciously know this or unconsciously know this. They know that they can insulate themselves from the consequences, right? And so how do you disincentivize? In Gaul, all right, the disincentivization was because the Gallic nobility was actually tied to the welfare of the province. And it kind of helped that they weren't the imperial center, right? But, and they had this plan, under Edius, who was a late Roman general who beat, I think he was the one who beat Attila the Hun. Edius had this, was part of this conspiracy to move the capital of the empire and the imperial regalia and all that to Gaul and functionally rebuild the whole western part of the Roman Empire around a stabilized Gaul, which existed at that time. This was before the Franks decided to take over the show, but they were employed at this time, right? So how do you disincentivize, at least from current state, from September the 4th, year of our Lord 2025 forward, how do you create a political economic policy, that a narrative or whatever that manages to disincentivize your elites, your rich people, from selling out the country in order to protect their personal fortunes, knowing that they can insulate themselves from the consequence? How do you do that?
Usually it involves systems collapse or revolution
but that's a massive policy failure.
Yeah, I know. I agree. No, I think you stated extremely well. I agree with you. But it's like, how do we get there when you've deracinated, delocalized the elites? I don't know. I don't know of any case where that's happened without that sort of massive systems failure, systems collapse, and that's I think what we're all struggling with.
Well, I mean, in Gaul, the Franks were able to kind of create the Franks and the Gallic aristocracy mixed, and they were able to create a functional nation state out of that, right? And that, and that had primacy, even until this day, right? So there's ways out of this, but you're absolutely right. I think the only way out is finding wherever that there's a localized elite that's still kind of rooted in to geography or a people or something like that, and trying to find a way to hedge them against these national or international elites.
Yeah, and I think the potential is there, and I think that's part of why so much of the American mainstream establishment, entertainment portrayal of just the local small town, business or government leader as some kind of hick shithead has been an intentional discrediting to keep those sort of power blocks from persisting.
Well, these are all excellent points we've all made on this topic. But I think in closing, I will just say that all of us over here, as America is a descendant of Anglo Protestants, it is part of our history. I do wish all of our English friends and all those living in the UK a swift solution to all of your problems, and we all wish the best for you.
So, and the other three nations too.
Indeed, absolutely. All right. Well, we're not done yet with the checking up on the rest of the Anglosphere. So, in addition to what is going on, speaking of when we're talking about the whole domino effect on these other nations, well, Australia got into it this weekend, where they had a massive protest across the entire country over the weekend about mass migration. They had over 250,000 people show up to all of these various protests all across the largest cities in the country, in Melbourne and Perth and Sydney and et cetera, et cetera. So, but that is not the only thing that actually came out of this. There were actually clashes between nationalist groups and Antifa, a lot of street brawling that was going on. I mean, I must say, the Australians being descendants of, a prison colony, they certainly are a little bit more rough, shall we say, than some other people, which I got to say, I mean, in this way, I've always felt a kind of a kinship to Australians as, compared to other people in the Anglosphere. I don't know if other Americans feel much the same way, but I feel like America and Australia both have very, very similar origin stories and similar histories. And I don't know, I felt a connection to Australia, even though I've never been there. But, any other opening comments on these Australia protest, Jens, before we show some clips?
I was going to say the first thing that needs to be understood is Australia actually has somewhat of a legacy understanding of the issue of mass migration and the effect, partly just because their Cold War strategy was always very concerned with the fact they need to keep China out completely, because it's understood that, hypothetically, if the PLA could ever get troops there, they could easily overrun them just through mass, waves of personnel. So unlike a lot of the world where you talk about mass migration being an act of war by itself, people look at you like you're crazy. That was essentially the official, strategic position of Australia for a large part in the 20th century.
Yeah, if anybody remembers the movie, which is much better than American History X, Romper Stomper, it was the point was Vietnamese immigrants. I mean, they were dealing with that. When was that movie made? Early 90s? Maybe started being written in the late 80s. And they've been dealing with this issue for a long time. And it just basically, like all the other Anglosphere nations, after they took in so many of these foreign groups, and they got their special interests, and they could start donating to politicians, and politicians just decided to go all the way to the left. Anglos just, it didn't matter anymore. So they took the sides, and that's what they're fighting against now in Australia. And, I honestly, out of all the countries, I could see Australia being the first domino, not only because it's a very small population, and I think that spirit is there. They also, I've been following them for a few years now, and they have some good leadership down there. It's just that they're going to have to deal with the fact that they will get arrested and sent to jail, and they don't have a quote unquote system, or a legal system like ours, like innocent until proven guilty. They're just assumed to be guilty down there, and you have to prove your innocence, and they really don't care. The leadership down there, just look at what they did during COVID. What they did during COVID was maniacal.
Despite the fact that we all inherited, or they inherited Anglo-Saxon common law like we did, the United States, again, because of the First and Second Amendments, which as much as we may scoff at, their impotence, they've done a lot, right? The rest of the Anglosphere, some point in the 20th century, they decided that the old English, or the rights of Englishmen, didn't include, saying things that were offensive, and the right to self-defense was basically negated in every jurisdiction slowly over time. So the weapons were taken away in my lifetime. The right to say anything that offends anybody was basically taken away. And that's despite the fact this is a very rough culture in a lot of ways. So they're definitely chafing under, I think, what the government is doing.
Alrighty, so let's actually show this clip here of Thomas Sewell, who actually don't know too much about, aside from another scary far right provocateur, is trying to bring out about the end of the Australian government or what have you. But all I see right here is just a patriot for his country, trying to defend his homeland. So let's watch and see.
We're going to go down in a blob. We're going to head down this road here, cross over the bridge, and get to Fed Square. From there, we're going to be there for about probably an hour, waiting for the whole public to come. Now, obviously, there's Antifa that potentially going to try to ambush us on the way in. I don't think they're going to do shit. I think there's like 20 of them. The goal is to get the Parliament House, to get the speakers and podium set up, and then we're going to run through some of the speakers today, and I'll finish off the speeches at the end of the day. Okay? Understood? Let's go.
Well, they certainly made it through. So, I mean, just friendly reminder for everyone, just be physically fit. But we here at the OGC, as a not political organization, not doing any of these marchings of any kinds like this or anything like that. I do say it was pretty foolish for these Antifa guys to get in the way of these guys. So that's all I'll say on that.
Yeah, vegans probably should not form a human wall in front of a bunch of rugby players.
Yeah, yeah, indeed.
Should probably try not to stop a pile driver shaped formation by creating a static linear wall. That's not exactly a good way to.
Yeah, these guys, these Antifa guys, have they not played Rome Total War? Come on, guys. Unbelievable.
Yeah, call me a bit presumptuous here, but I don't think these Antifa guys know much about, street fighting. It's a disorganized group of people versus like a literally disciplined marching in column to the beat of drums, probably with numerical superiority. I don't know what they, I mean, maybe if their goal was to get the dude arrested, I don't know, maybe they succeeded.
Well, they did. I mean, he was Thomas Sewell was arrested in response to this. So claiming actually that he was assaulting indigenous Aborigines. But
well, that's, the point I was going to make is that it's sad to see Anglos fighting Anglos here, but we have to understand that the social engineering regime that we've undergone, a lot of our people are lost, and we can't allow that to get in our way.
Well, at the very least, I will not be condemning these guys or any men in the fellow Anglosphere who are doing what is right to defend their nation and their history and their people. So, as we were talking about, though, this issue of mass immigration is just coming to a head. It's everywhere in every single Western nation at this point. It is the number one issue across the board. It's coming to a head in the UK. It's bubbling over in Australia. The Germans have elections coming up fairly soon. It's been a problem in France for the last couple of elections. I'm waiting for the Canadians to, wake up and finally deal with this too, because they seem to be the ones that have just been affected the most out of literally everybody in this. But the old order is just done on this one. You cannot have this mass immigration continue.
Yeah, was it Alberta, Canada, is looking at having a secessionist vote this coming election?
Well, that'll be very, very interesting at the least. So, I mean, did you guys see the clips this week of one of the police chiefs in Ontario who's just saying like, oh, well, do not fight anybody who is invading your home. Just always be sure to 100% comply, and most of the time they'll be okay. It's just
most of the time.
Yeah, what an absolute shameful display.
Yeah.
If any of you are listening from Alberta, just understand that as soon as your state inevitably gets annexed, you too can create the Alberta chapter of the Old Glory Club.
Yeah. Wouldn't that be nice? I'd like to go up to Alberta, go visit the Royal Tyrrell Museum of Natural History, go, shoot a caribou or something. That'd be cool.
Yeah. If it was added to the U.S., it'd probably double the amount of land used for cattle raising in the U.S. Don't quote me on that.
Yeah, certainly quite a bit of there for sure. But anyway, so that is our update from the rest of the Anglosphere in our foreign policy segment of the show. Let's go through the first round of super chats here, and then we'll deal with some domestic stuff.
Best comment so far. I can't believe that's the guy who wrote Black Rednecks and White Liberals.
That's funny. Very funny indeed. Yes. No relation to the one exception to every argument that you get in with anyone. Well, Thomas Sowell did this. Like, yeah, different character indeed. All right, let's go through the first round of the super chats, and then we will get back to discussing some of the stuff on this side of the pond. All right. So the first super chat of the evening does not go to Solid Snake. Unacceptable, my friend. You didn't get here in time. But Herb Seasoning sends us $5.56. I think that's a very nice denomination to be sending us, I'd say. If you don't carry 45 GAP in modified SIG 227, you're not a real patriot. Enough said, brother. Also, rip to Paul Harrell. Yes, of course, it was the 1-year anniversary of Mr. Paul Harrell's death, this week. So, very tragic indeed. I don't know. Any comments, Pete, on 45 GAP?
45 GAP is hilarious, but yeah, rest in peace, Paul Harrell. I've been going down a rabbit hole of a lot of his older videos, rewatching some, and man, what a loss that was.
Yeah, it gave us a wealth of knowledge, to be sure. Indeed. Speaking of somebody else who we lost, I will take this time right now to, if anyone was a member of the old Deep Lore Discord chat, or as part of any other many chats that are going around, or many moderator groups or anything in our thing, everyone please pray for the spirit and soul of Lady of Shalott, who we lost this week. A wonderful woman who was just a constant reminder and a member of this community for years and years and years, and she will be deeply missed. So
go listen, go find that AA stream where she and Thomas talk about the Troubles. It's I've listened to that several times.
Yeah, it was quite good. And then I also saw Millennial Woes retweeted her appearance on Millennial from I think it was 2023 or 22 or something. So yes, indeed. So Lady of Shalott will be missed greatly. So all right, moving on the super chats here to Solid Snake 1964, who got in the second super chat of the evening for $10. Evening gents, sick as a dog right now. Maybe that's why he wasn't behind enemy lines so quickly. But a whole lot better than the cartel guys that got blown up in the boat. I'm glad to see something be done about the drug smuggling, even if a little. Hopefully, lots more to come. Salute. Well, thank you, Solid Snake. We appreciate your super chats as always, my friend.
Yeah, I don't think any of us are sad to see them go. We just want to see them all go, and that's going to take planning, and not just a shot here and a shot there.
Indeed. Chauncey of Northwest for $25. Thank you very much, sir. I just wanted to say that thank you to the men of American Spirits who have been doing the vital work of resurrecting the true history of our republic. God bless the OGC. Damn right. American Spirits is probably the most important content that we are putting out right now, I would say. Charlemagne and Turnip Seed are doing amazing work over there, answering the question of what is an American, and I'm learning something new every single week about this one. I mean, I think everybody in the chat could just talk about how their own American education was sorely lacking throughout all of their years in school. And I just find out new things all the time, even about like the different ethnic groups and cultures that came to make up the United States, whether that was the Scots-Irish, the English, the Puritans, the Quakers, or what have you. There's just so much history that gets lost because in your own local area, like myself, I'm growing up in the Midwest, I just never really paid attention too much about the history of like the Puritans and the Quakers, because that's just not my history of the settling of the Midwest. So it's very, very interesting to hear about all these groups that came to make up the United States. And I highly recommend everyone head on over to American Spirits on Monday, where you too can learn a great deal about our American history. So, all right, Romega sends us $20. Mexico invades America. Shouldn't we invade them? Well, I mean, yes, I've said it for a long time. They definitely deserve to be the only country the United States is at war with right now. I'll say that much for sure.
Problem is, we do that, then we have Mexico.
Yeah, and then this was the argument against doing it back in like the 1800s, or like not the late 1800s.
John C. Calhoun.
Oh, Calhoun's
Calhoun is like, if we do this, they're going to come here, and they are not white, and they will destroy and the country will be destroyed.
Well, like at the turn of the century, around the McKinley administration, back when empire was in vogue for conversation, and we were having similar conversations that we're actually having today, right? When America held the Philippines as a actual possession, as well as Puerto Rico and other places, right? We were fighting a legitimate guerrilla war to maintain our possession over the Philippines as this, and everyone forgets about that. Like, we just straight had the Philippines as an imperial possession, overseas possession, and MacArthur was dictator, emperor of it for a little while. But like, this was the argument that people like John Muir were making, who, by the way, was a staunch Nordicist. Environmentalism and eugenics have historically always gone hand in hand. The people who were the hardest environmentalists were also tended to correlate very heavily with the hard Nordicist eugenicism that was very popular around this time. People like Madison Grant and Lothrop Stoddard. But like, these were the arguments that they were making, regarding the Philippines, regarding Puerto Rico, regarding other overseas American possessions. It's just like, even these tiny little possessions will open the door to, imperial conquest, and then we'll be just like Rome. Because what happened in Rome is that after, I don't mean to mention Rome again, it's just a good example. After the Punic Wars and the Roman political economy shifted from a primarily small landholding yeoman farming-based political economy to a large landowner, very top-heavy, slave-based political economy. What this did was those slaves had to be sourced from somewhere, and it wasn't all red-haired Gauls. As a matter of fact, a lot of it were Numidians from North Africa. A lot of them were from the Levant. So what this caused was a legitimate browning of the Roman populace over time, because these slaves, some of them were freed, they would breed, and as always, especially when you have long-term populaces in an area, they tend to intermix, right? So this is what there was a browning that did occur in Rome over time, just from the importing of these, and it even accelerated after Caracalla implemented the Antonine Constitution, which declared everyone in the empire is now a citizen. If you're some Nubian in Egypt, you are now equal to the Julii family of patricians. Stop me if this sounds familiar, right? But ultimately, these were the arguments that were being made at the turn of the century by people like John Weir, is that if we take over Mexico, if we take over these other, and I know there's another super chat around here about filibustering that we'll either get to or we won't until the end. But like this was the primary argument against it, was that, or at least one of the primary arguments against it, was that if you take over Mexico, then you have, as Dr. Fieldhouse said, you have Mexico. You have to deal with that massive influx of population, and they're not all going to stay in Mexico, because now what you've done is you've lifted the international restriction for that whole populace to now flood into your country, and to go not just to like Texas, but to like Maine and other places like that. So this is the issue. This is the issue with any sort of territorial expansion, right? Is that this is, the ethnic makeup of your populace has to be taken into consideration before you embark on something like this. I know that was another long Paul screed. And
you can lose by winning.
Say again?
You can lose by winning.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah. Well, maybe we can rule them like a satrapy from another time. Just you guys just stay over there. I don't know. Romega, I talk about min-maxing super chats. I think you've won the award for your min-maxing on this one for this week. So let's move on to Seasider, who sends us $10 and a salute, as he does every week. Thank you very much, Seasider. You are much appreciated, as always. I got Adam Keeney, another frequent super chatter, for $20. He says, in Guyana's waters are some of the largest known untapped oil reserves. Venezuela claims to own 2/3 of Guyana, including the offshore reserves. 75% of those reserves are owned by Exxon and Chevron. Really? I didn't know that last part.
That border conflict back before Guyana was independent. I was actually I was listening about this today. That border conflict almost caused the United States and Britain to go to war. Back when it was British Guyana, and Venezuela was saying, hey, America, isn't there this whole Monroe Doctrine thing that you're supposed to be doing, when Grover Cleveland was president? And, and then Kaiser Wilhelm said something crazy, and the whole situation was diffused.
Mm. All right, moving on to Dash for $5. The left shrieks they weren't given due process, but the left made it where nothing done with due process would be harsh enough to deter these thugs. Yeah, that's a good point, too. Well, Mr. Paul W. Hall, frequent joiner on Mr. D's Twitter Spaces, for $10 says, filibustering is the answer. Let the spirit of William Walker rise again. So
I think I beat that dead horse to death.
Yeah, there you go.
You can win something you really don't want.
Yeah.
All right. I'm a cool dude with the avatar of Oswald Spengler for $10 says, salute the OGC, a great group of fellas. Cool dude, over and out. Just imagine like Oswald Spengler saying that. Just can't get it out of my head. But thank you very much, sir. Greatly appreciate that. Kyle Linskog for $15 sends us a salute. Love it. Thank you very much. Moving on to Skibum220, another frequent super chatter. Thank you very much, guys, as always, for $25. We're going to win. Salute the OGC. Damn right. Thank you for everyone for saluting tonight. We're getting quite a few of those this evening. And moving on to Volp's Persona for $10. He also sends us a salute with a bunch of running Broncos. So dig that. Thank you very much. Our good friend Cringewalker, Luthemplar, message me on Telegram, sir, for $5. Jean-Baptiste for Verloy wrote quite a bit on inventing a new elite to fortify around and endure, but you'll have to learn some Dutch. Yes. Yeah, I don't know about that. I don't know. People could take a look at that. Cringe Walker's recommendations are always very fruitful in my experience.
Just get a PDF of it and feed it into Grok and tell Grok to translate it into English. I did that recently with a book in Russian.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You know, on Cringe Walker's recommendations, that whole screed I did earlier about the Gallic nobility in Rome, that was taken directly from I think a graduate thesis that someone at Texas Tech in the 80s did that he sent me. So his recommendations are usually very good.
Usually, I would say Dutch stuff is usually fairly easy to find English translations of, or at least English softwares that are pretty good. It's French and Russian are the languages that are hard to find good translations of academic documents.
All right. Moving on to Enrico Palazzo for $10. The OGC should declare themselves Hasidic to get some of that sweet Homeland Security grant money. Oh, don't worry, Enrico. We're getting to that story next. It's funny. A lot of our guys in our audience will send these super chats like in advance. Solid Snake is famous for doing this. He just sends one in advance. It just happens to be a topic that we talk about as well. So our guys are on top of things. But do not worry, Enrico. We'll be getting to that one very shortly. So, all right. Crypto Feral for $15 says, greetings from the Ozark Plateau Mountains, OGC in progress here. Yes, of course. Yeah, there is an Arkansas chapter up and running, but the Ozark are kind of on the other side. So, everyone check out the OGC website. Take a look for your local chapters in your area. And if you do not find one there, please reach out to us and we will get you in contact with fellow friends, and maybe you guys can set up a chapter in your local area. New ones are popping up almost weekly at this point, so they are growing like crazy as always. And thank you everyone for making it possible. Christopher Burke sends us $2 and a salute. Man, everyone's saluting tonight. Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate it. Chief Slingin' Beef, another prolific super chatter, sends us $5. Englanders, racing your own flag is a hate crime. Southerners, first time, mate. Yeah, that is a good point. I wish them the best of luck and the St. Andrew's Cross, St. George's. Yes, indeed. Dawn Browning, speaking of pleasant women in our sphere, and Australian women at that, as the dear lady was living in Australia in her final days. But anyway, Dawn Browning sends us $20 and a super 10% of white Australians were convicts at the end of the transportation in 1868. Oh, really? Huh.
A lot of the ones who were debtors. So felony at the time usually meant the death penalty. So yeah, they were criminals, but it's not quite what we think of as a criminal in 2025.
Yeah, that's fair. All right. Bolero 393 sends us $10 for Lady of Shalott. Yes. Thank you very much. And the dear lady will indeed be missed. Maple Copperhead for $10 sends us a salute, gentlemen. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Our good friend Paladin YYZ sends us $20. This just in, Epstein files are now being shipped from Venezuela heading towards Washington, D.C. as we speak. Oops. Paladin is a funny guy. Sends us some jokes quite a bit. Romega is back for another $20. He says, thanks for the great answer. Yeah, well, there you go.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much, sir. All right. Flamin' Adventures for $20. OGC South Florida is having a meetup Friday evening, September 12th. If you're in the area, please get in touch with the Yellow Dog Pack OGC. Well, there you go, guys. So if you are in South Florida, definitely try and get involved. It's a big state in Florida, and I know they're trying to get the chapter lodges set up down there. So definitely get involved if you're in the South Florida area. Great state with a lot of great people. So, alrighty. Moving on to someone stole my bike for $5. All right. Good work, gentlemen. Big fan of the show. I live in Virginia and getting in contact with my local OGC. Well, there you go. Thank you very much. The Virginia guys are a nice crowd, I would say. Pretty sharp dudes out there. Yeah.
Yes, they are.
All right. Jack Fitzgibbon for $5. Every single one is going back. He who tries to make you doubt that, compromise, or feel a tiny shred of sympathy for these parasites is your enemy. Salute. Well, we're gonna.
Well,
we'll
you know what I
again.
hear? You know what I hear? I hear an anarcho-capitalist going, one day we're going to defeat the state and we're going to have our anarcho-capitalist paradise. We're going to have Incapistan. And anybody who doesn't believe that or counter-signals it is a statist.
And then they'll tell you Switzerland is evil because they have the draft.
Yeah. Well, while it is important to keep up morale, it is also important to have a healthy understanding of what this fight is going to look like. So, but yes, they're all going back on this. We all agree. Mighty Balzac for $2 says, I hear you're a transphobe now, Father. Don't get it. Moving on.
The Catholic Church that was shut up last week.
Yeah, I get that, but big sad. Herb seasoning again for $5. Blackstone, Black Rock, more like Black Cube. Well, yeah, I mean, just like the distinction between all these things, it's just.
Oh, the previous super chat was referencing a friggin' British comedy show.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, he was referencing a British comedy show.
Oh, right. Father Ted. Yeah. I see. Very funny. All right. Okay. Good. Moving on, gentlemen. Back to our stories right here. Enrico Palazzo already made reference to it in the chat earlier, but we just have to talk about this one. I mean, it's just every single time, man. And it's really starting to, it just makes your blood boil every time. All right. So, of course, in response to the horrible and tragic shooting that occurred at a Catholic church last week, where 2 young children were killed and many others were injured, and of course, the shooting was perpetrated by a demonic troon. The response from this was an emergency declaration. Actually, here we go. I'll read from here. So, emergency grants, for the protection of religious institutions. Okay. So we'll get to this list here in a minute. I've got one open on another tab here. But anyway, so New York got $48 million block grant and apparently has been handed out $450,000 in grants to every single synagogue in the state. So going through all of this, from Homeland Security saying all Americans should be able to practice their religion without fear of terrorism or violence. Under the leadership of President Trump, Secretary Noem is awarding $110 million to more than 600 faith-based organizations. Noem is awarding $110 million to more than and other nonprofits, yada, yada, yada. All right, gentlemen. So going down the list right here, and I'm actually going to link this account in the chat, in the live chat. So if people want to take a look at this, they can follow along because it's just unbelievable. So get ready, buckle up, everyone. So Department of Public Safety in Missouri for the amount of $5,215,130. The award, Jewish Community Center, $425,000. Next, we've got New York State Division of Homeland Security and Emergency Services, subawardee Baptist Esther School for Girls, $450,000. Going on again to Matzava, Jerusalem of America, $450,000. Moving on again, Talmud Torah de Nitra in New York City, $450,000. Yeshiva Vinsk Dekal Torah, I can't even spell or pronounce any of these fucking words, $450,000. Yeshiva University in New York, $450,000.
Like they need it.
Yeah. So the list goes on and on and on and on and on and on. You'll sense a theme here. None of these are Catholic schools, Catholic churches, Catholic institutions, or Christian denominations of any kind. So in response to the shooting of a Catholic school, which the media also tried to proclaim that the character was anti-Semitic in nature because there was some, quotes about the mustache man written on some of the magazines that the killer had written on some of the devices. Also proceeded to drive past a synagogue on the way to shoot up a Catholic church. But very, very anti-Semitic behavior, I'm sure. This is just the response. We're gonna go loot the treasury right now.
Well, I mean, let's just face it. I mean, we know that this this diaspora is parasitical. They're going to take whatever they can get. I mean, everyone in politician in this frigging country, it seems, with the exception of like 2 or 3, seems to have taken an oath to Israel. I mean, who's really shocked by this? Yeah, sure, it's infuriating, but I mean, it's just more of what we already knew. It's more of what we already knew is going to happen. I mean, it's just this is just really another fucking Thursday where Jews get all the money, they get all the protection, and screw Christians, screw Americans, screw everybody except them. It's a great system, but this is just 2,000 years of history repeating itself. I mean, 3,500 really, if you believe the Old Testament. So, I mean, shocking. Wow.
Yeah, I was going to state the obvious that since this is supposed to be grants for improving security on these houses of worship, before anybody on our side thinks that their church should go out there and get I would actually discourage that, just because with the money is going to come some level of control. And if you actually need a security force, which you probably need a security force, the last thing you want is some kind of federal agent snooping into what you're doing.
Yeah, it's probably a good point. But I mean, I'll say this as well. I mean, just the obvious thing right here. It's like, okay, you're getting $500,000 for security forces. I mean, we all know. There was actually just a report that was just coming out of Congress just this week that over $1 trillion were stolen for the United States government during the COVID lockdowns, through whether it was faulty, PPE loans or money sent abroad or what have you. I mean, let's all be real here. That $500,000 that all these synagogues are getting now isn't going to go to security, and they're just going to use it for literally whatever, because there's just no oversight with this shit.
Yeah, well, they've got lots of accountants that are going to be very good at defining what is security for the purpose of taxes and receipts. And again, just so we're clear, I absolutely support churches having security forces of their own, but you do not want federal oversight. You'll have plenty of the actual cops who are in your parish or congregation. They're the kind of people who can help you organize, train, and make sure you're compliant with local laws. You don't want to get in bed with the DHS for your church.
Yep. Well, I don't think there's really much else that we could point out on this one, though. Just one thing I will say on this one is that the only thing I'm going to push back on this one, I'm going to be very careful with this. All right. This is not like so many people have been complaining about, it's just, this is just government, spending money like crazy because that's what the government does. And it's like, as Pete kind of pointed out, it's like the fact that it's like the government money is
it's just money. It's money laundering. Yeah. It's just money laundering.
And it's just
graft.
It's also just what they do. That's the only thing I'm going to say about it. So,
the most predictable ethnicity of people on Earth.
Yeah, pretty much. So, I mean, it's important to point out stuff like this. I mean, it's good for oil field rando and all these other people for calling this bullshit out and bringing it to light. But I mean, yeah. Anyway, so. Well, speaking of another foreign group that are causing problems at the state level, we were actually just talking about this a couple weeks ago about what is going on at Dearborn stand with rigging local elections and stuff like this. And this just came across my desk today, and we're going to talk about it. So the city of Dearborn, Michigan, speaking of other foreign groups here. So Dearborn Heights, first in the U.S. with Arabic on police badge. So if people aren't familiar with this area, just outside the city of Detroit, Dearborn was actually where Henry Ford was from. Basically, it was his town. They got Greenfield Village there. They got the original Ford factory. Everything, it is in Dearborn, just outside of Detroit. And this place was a hotbed for dropping all of the detritus from GWAT. Basically, there's a huge group of Armenians, Syrians, Afghanis, Iraqis. Middle Easterners of all kinds, ended up in this spot of the country in massive numbers. And in very, very quick period of time, took over the entire area. It's now called Dearborn Stand by locals now. There's Islamic calls to prayer in the streets all the time. The street signs are written in Arabic. The city council is all, Islamic foreigners of some strain or another. And now they've just got, Arabic patches on, police signs now. On police badges. So wonderful.
I was looking at that, and apparently, because it was just like the original press release from the department that was published by the local Fox affiliate, and as far as I can tell, no other news did anything beyond reprinting that original one. From what I can tell, this isn't actually going to be an organization-wide patch. It says it's just a voluntary patch, which I don't know what voluntary insignia on a uniform means. But I thought was interesting is apparently it was a not Middle Eastern officer actually felt the need to design this and have this implemented. So again,
that's just always how it's just always how these things go with that kind of stuff, right? It's just taking the natural inclination of like our people and just weaponizing it against us in this degree, just being like, oh, we're going to be accommodating to these guys, and maybe they'll just be part of this grand old experiment and get involved with the local community, and they'll feel more at home, and they'll be just like us. It's like, no, it's just so unacceptable. And this surely won't be the first, and it surely isn't going to be voluntary for long. Honestly, I'm surprised that a place like Minnesota, like the Minneapolis, hasn't beat them to it, quite frankly. But it's like this all over the Midwest. The Midwest in particular, it has a huge problem with all the Islamic immigration. Like this, like the southern border's got a lot of problems with various, Mexicans and Hispanics and stuff like that. The Chinese are taking over like the Northwest and the Northeast parts of the country. But the Midwest in particular seems to be particularly targeted by Islamic immigration of one way or another.
Look, down in Hialeah in Miami, you have street signs in Spanish. You have 110-foot statues to monkey gods in friggin' Texas. Is this surprising? No one's doing anything about it. I mean, this is basically the reaction to this is the same. At least England is. People in England are starting to act. People in Australia are starting to act. We seem to have it a lot better here, but for how long?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of our advantage is the fact that the United States is just so big and is, extremely populated that it takes a while to develop a colony internally.
Yeah, that's what's gotten us out of significant internal change. And I think, during the Industrial Revolution, the reason why there was such upheaval in Germany and Italy and and Japan and in other places was because these countries industrialized and their population doubled, tripled, quadrupled over the course of like 1 or 2 generations. England, they had a long period of time, not a lot of space, but they had a long period of time to kind of develop it. And for the United States, when we industrialized, it was very slow, and we had a lot of territory for excess population to go out into, right? So that's kind of a double-edged sword. I've done my whole Rome, Browning slave-based economy screed, but it's like, I'm wondering, that sword cuts both ways, right? The United States just being able to use its massive size and interior and, just diversity of geography and amount of geography to kind of sidestep radical social change. It cuts the other way when you need rapid radical social change. It's just not going to happen just because everyone's like, oh, that's over in Michigan. I don't live in Michigan, et cetera, et cetera.
On that note, too, people seem to think that there's something magic about America where everybody just suddenly assimilates and speaks English right away. And I remind people that, large parts of the United States, not just in the Midwest, but parts of Appalachia, some of the major cities had majority or plurality German-speaking populations until the First World War, when several states made it illegal to speak German on the telephone or in public. To the point that the German language was largely suppressed in large parts of the U.S. and that not just that these people were bilingual before, but suddenly it became mandatory to speak English in public. So again, the United States, it's cultural assimilation requires you first to have a culture to assimilate to, and it requires there to be some pressure for people to assimilate to that. And as I say that, I suddenly realized that every Latino child I ever went to school with, suddenly could not speak Spanish any better than I could as a white guy from Alabama. So maybe I'm wrong on this one, but I don't think so.
Yeah, it's funny that that's a theory I recently heard about why the Britons, the Anglo-Saxons didn't actually genetically replace the Britons outside of like really East Anglia and places like that, or the South. Is it's like in the north and in the west of England, the Britons maintained in modern day DNA tests rather kind of prove this, is that most white English people were more genetically Briton than they were Anglo-Saxon. And there's
only
this
about
theory
30% Anglo-Saxon.
Yeah, and the theory about that is basically the prestige language theory, is that over time, Britain was relegated to like a lower caste and undercaste language, and the language of law and the language of trade and the language of public life and all this stuff. I don't know if it was enforced the way English was on the Germans in the Midwest, but over time, everyone just started speaking Anglo-Saxon, and then you see this happen again when the Normans conquer the English, right? Everyone, and it was a lot less successful because the Normans kind of forgot French, but initially for a time, French became the language of prestige, and then over time that melded with Anglo-Saxon to make modern English.
Yeah,
but
our perfect bastard language that we speak and conquer the world with.
Yeah, exactly. But more directly to this story, right? I think this is a great example of what culture distortion looks like. This I'm not going to lie to you. This patch looks like something that would have been. I never deployed to GWAT, but it's what I imagine, something that would have been put on a slideshow for a pre-deployment brief as to what you'll see in your area of operations.
It's just so maddening looking at this that they have the Great Seal of the state of Michigan in the center, and then they got Arabic like right next to it. It's like these two things should never be put together under any circumstances. This is just a slap in the face.
Now that you mention it, kind of looks like the Iraqi Highway Patrol, if anybody wants to pull that up. So.
Oh goodness.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know.
So talk about bringing the GWAT home, man.
Yeah. I mean, it's just particularly sad, especially given that this is my home state. So people know I have a deep connection to it. But I mean, and also like the seal. I mean, the seal dates back to the Hudson Bay Company. So it's a lot of history attached there.
Of all people, Michel Foucault said that when you decide you're going to have an empire and you're going to go out and you're going to find enemies to fight, eventually it's going to come home. And here it is.
Yeah. Alrighty. Let's move on to our final story of the evening, which I just found it so hilarious that I could not talk about this this week. I mean, we've been talking about a lot of like heavy hitting conversations and topics and stuff the last couple of weeks. I felt like we needed something a little bit more enjoyable or a little bit hilarious. But apparently, Donald Trump has ordered. People have seen like clips and everything, like a bit of a reconstruction on the White House grounds and making everything look a little bit better. We've seen pictures of various rooms in the White House, and they're talking about putting that big expansion on it to add it in a ballroom and stuff to have parties and everything. So This is like just the most Donald Trump thing ever. I can totally imagine that he did this 100%. I don't doubt this for a second. But anyway, here we go. I used at the White House the most beautiful marble and stone available anywhere. Surfaces are very important to me as a builder. As everyone knows, I built many great buildings and other things over the years. At the White House, I am very proud of the beautiful stonework we did in the Rose Garden, in this case, using limestone plus. The Rose Garden is completed and far more beautiful than anyone ever had in mind when it was conceived of decades ago. 3 days ago, while admiring the stonework, I happened to notice a huge gash in the limestone that extended more than 25 yards long. It was deep and nasty. I started yelling, "Who did this? And I want to find out now." And I didn't say this in a nice manner. I can imagine so. I wondered, was it vandalism or was it stupidity? Lo and behold, because of the fact that we've installed the finest security equipment anywhere, they brought back the stupid people with their boss watching in sunglasses. It was a subcontractor that was installing heavy landscaping on the steel cart that was broken and tilted badly, with it rubbing against the soft, beautiful stone. I love and respect great workers and contractors, but something like this should never happen. Now I'll replace the stone, charge the contractor, and never let that contractor work at the White House again. But how great is the video equipment we caught them cold, make America great again. I mean, I just have to imagine being like this guy who screwed up in this way, you know? It's like literally the president of the United States decides to go in to the camera security room and watch and wait for your mistake to pop up on screen. And, oh, yeah, I just got fired by the president. But I dare say Mr. President is now the victim of so many other contractor problems that many people have had in the United States. And I might point out, the guys who are working on that don't look very white to me. That's all I'll say.
Well, I mean, I was going to say the guy in the sunglasses sort of looks like Trump. I'm sorry, John.
Yeah, I was saying when you're the delivery driver and you download it, at that point you just say something's damaged, you put it back there, and it's not your fault. So not just they were stupid on like 3 different levels, you know.
Yeah,
it's
really.
The guy with the backpack blower.
They didn't have to let it happen. They could have written it off and not been in trouble.
Yeah, they tried to sneak it by the president of the United States.
You'll never notice. Nobody's ever gonna say there's not like there's cameras here.
Yeah.
That's Trump undercover right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, do you guys remember that hilarious meme of Trump yelling at the kid cutting the grass on the White House lawn?
That's great.
You know, he's like, "Who destroyed this stone?" You know?
The guy with the backpack blower. I'm sorry, man. He looks Central American to me.
Yeah.
I might be the only white guy in the world who owns a backpack blower. So
I love how Trump is so, like, you know, you can't use the word autistic to describe anything about Trump, right? But like, I love how Trump is so particular about the quality of the buildings that he constructs. You know, he's like, I built so many. I think, you know, at heart, that's kind of what he looks at himself as, is like a builder of buildings, because he's worked like his whole life. It's been in real estate and construction, you know. And I think I really genuinely believe he takes a particular kind of pride in, you know, to him, what is making America great again is it's rebuilding it's literally remodeling the Rose Garden of the White House. It's adding a massive event venue to the White House. I mean, I hope it doesn't look horrible, you know, but
I don't know, man. I mean, I really haven't seen any reason to knock Donald Trump's taste on basically like anything. Maybe his food choice.
Well,
as it relates to like aesthetics and stuff, I mean, they got like beautiful women, beautiful buildings. I don't know.
I'm not gonna the gauche nature of the various Trump towers could be brought up, but I'll leave that be. They're iconic in their own way. But yeah,
This reminds me of that time I stumbled across a CD about the sounds of Mexico, and it was just a leaf blower going for 60 minutes.
Oh goodness. But hey, these are the jobs Americans won't do, guys, you know?
Well, I mean, as a guy who did work in the manual labor industry for several years, you know, I was actually a stonemason. People will know this, but
damn,
it's just, you just see it everywhere where you go, that there is a, let's just call it there's a degree of laziness that is going on throughout the entire, contractor and manual labor industry throughout the whole country. And what I kind of chalked this up to while I was there was just, again, most people's jobs are just undercut by foreigners. That's definitely a huge problem with it. But the other thing is, it's just the massive amounts of regulations for setting up your own shop. It's just people don't really have the incentive to do like such an amazing job at these. A lot of these guys are literally just taking anybody who will come and work for them. There's really no mechanism to actually, for upward mobility if you're getting paid really well, unless you want to go open your own shop. And that comes with a whole bunch of other problems. I mean, deporting everybody would certainly help this industry, but it certainly wouldn't fix it. No, not fully.
We have YouTube and trade skills. We are trade schools. We can train new people eventually.
Oh yeah, for sure. And these jobs just need to pay well, much better as well. If you want to attract like good candidates to actually be doing work like this. So, all right.
I was just going to say he has paid for most of these renovations out of pocket, hasn't he?
Yeah, to my knowledge, yeah.
Yeah, which. I mean, how do you fault a guy who's donating this as a public service? But a lot of people are complaining about changes in the White House. I mean, the White House has to be renovated because it's 200-something years old. I mean, mine and Pete's lifetime, they had that major renovation in the early 80s. So it's an old building. You have to repair it. This had to happen, and he's doing it out of pocket. I can't throw any stones here.
Yeah, no, I see no objections to this. Nope. But I just thought it was funny. Like Trump sees one gash on the stone. He's like, find me the man responsible for this.
That's a lot of money on stone, and it is a pain to move.
Oh, yeah. I mean, trust me, stone and stone's very, very expensive. Let me tell you.
Yeah. On that note, it's interesting stone masonry companies because they're an example of a big business that's mostly family owned just because the economy of scales to go with transportation. So it's you get stone masonry companies have been owned by a family for 5 or 6 generations in the U.S.
Yeah. Yep. All right. So that is it for the stories for this evening. I just felt like I had to report that to everyone here because it was a cool one. But so let's go through the last bit of the super chats and we'll shut her down for the evening. So back to our super chat catch up. We got Cringe Walker sending us another $5 once again. The Midwest voted Trump, so they are being punished by their Democrat governors. Well, it certainly feels like that way. There's a huge fight going on right now in the House of Michigan, where $5 billion are just missing from the budget right now from Governor Whitmer, and the House Republicans are asking, where is this money? Where did it go? And there's just no response from anybody. That state is in a particularly bad spot right now because it's just ruled by women at all levels. The governor is a woman, the attorney general is a woman, just everything in that state is just run by women, and it sucks. So hopefully Michigan can have a turnaround in the midterms. Don't put fucking Tudor Dixon up as the challenger for governorship next time, you jackasses. But anyway, Paulie B for the big super chat of the evening, $50. Thank you very much, sir. We greatly appreciate that. I would give you some gold, sir, if I had any to give you. So, heartfelt question, he asks, what makes one notice? An orientation towards truth, having an ordered moral compass, because when I think about it, what pisses me off the most is that the person I used to be was killed by the subverters of our nation's soul. I mean, this really is like the question, right? Why is it that guys like us, whether it's people in the chat or guys who actually make content in this thing, why are we this way? It's definitely.
Well, here's what I would say is that if you look at how many people actually do, and actually how many people do go down the rabbit hole, and how many don't, and that it's the overwhelming majority, then you have to realize that if your plans are that you're going to you want to radicalize large sections of the population, first of all, that's not going to happen. Most people are not going to become radicals. They just don't. It's uncomfortable to them. It's rude. Most people are not going to do that. So, get over your democracy bullshit oh, if we just get 10% or 20%. No, it's always going to be a small group of people. And, I mean, I get it. I wish I said something on Twitter today. I said, someone was talking about the JQ, and I said, look, if you don't understand the JQ, the last 2,000 years of history, when you study it, you feel like there's something missing. Because that's always the way I felt. I would study history. I'd be like, what, the last 2,000 years of European and American history. I'm like, there's something wrong here. There's something that's being left out. And as soon as I discovered the JQ, I'm like, oh, well, there it is. Elite theory. There's a small group acting in their own self-interest who are much more organized than everyone else. And somehow they have money that, where did that come from? And they're working against everybody else in their own interest. So, I mean, yeah, it's once you see it, you can't unsee it. And once you see it, it kind of leads you, if you're someone like me, to want to tell other people. And that's when things really start going, you really have to buckle up and prepare for what comes after that.
I think a surprising number of people are devoid of any intellectual curiosity and will believe basically whatever they've been told. That's
certainly true.
So yeah.
I don't know. It's definitely a big question. One of the things
which is another reason why when people say, "Oh, they're all going home," okay, great, yeah, I want that, but you don't understand that once you start that, you have people, and I'm not just talking about boomers. You have people who are like, "Well, wait a minute, that's my neighbor. They've lived next to me for 10 years. We go to church together. I don't want him to leave." So now you're fighting your own population? I mean, I'm talking about people who voted for Trump to deport them all. Until you come to the realization that people are never going to be as radical as you are, and that most people haven't hardened their hearts as much as you have, you realize that whatever you're setting out to do, whatever you think needs to be done, is not only the people. There aren't only the people who are radically against you all the way on the other side who are going to fight against you, but there are people on your side right now who are going to be like, no, wait a minute, you're going too far. So if you're not taking this all into consideration and you're just throwing slogans out there, I mean, what you want to have a conversation with me? I'm sorry, I'm a little more intelligent than bumper sticker slogans.
Yeah, I mean, to Polyby, it's not so much. So the thing I've found is it's like it's either you notice or you don't, right? Like I think you've named it, an orientation towards truth, an ordered moral compass. Yeah, these are necessary things, and they're as Dr. Fieldhouse said, an intellectual curiosity. Yeah, that'll do it. But the issue so much now isn't, as Pete was kind of talking about, it's not about whether or not you notice something and whether or not you're able to throw out a few pieces of rhetoric. It's what are the models you're using? And by that I mean, like, what are your priors? What is the paradigms, the heuristics, the models of information processing that you are using to create a picture of the world? And secondly, how much do you believe in what you say? Right? How much do you? That's the problem now. It's not so much whether one notices or not anymore. It's more so is like, do you believe really and are you willing to take things to the logical conclusion? Do things need to be taken to their logical conclusion, on one issue or another issue, right? That's the problem, is a lot of people, and this is something we're starting to see more and more as the steam kind of starts going out of the scene with the victory of Trump and all that. A lot of people we're just simply here to repeat slogans back at other people. And really, it's just, you have to ask yourself this question: do you actually believe what you say you believe, or is it just rhetoric to you? And it's fine if you said things in the past and you're like, oh, well, this was just rhetoric. I didn't really mean this, but just be honest about it and understand that. So I don't know. I'm kind of with Pete on this though, is like, noticing is just something. I think it's a gift from God. And, these other things that you mentioned, Pauly B, and that we've talked about kind of bring you to it. But ultimately now it's not about noticing anymore. It's about, how like seriously, fully are you willing to take what you believe? How much are you willing to stake on it?
Yeah, I would say excellent points all around, gentlemen. Cal Trask sends us $5. Seppuku is the only option after presidential tongue lashing on Truth Social. Rip. Hilarious. Felix Fairmount for $2. Keep it up, gentlemen. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Chief Slinging Beef sends us $5. Where I grew up in rural Tennessee, every construction crew was American just 15 years ago. I have friends who do masonry, and they are so lowballed now. Salute. Yeah, definitely my experience, man.
It's hard to emphasize how recent ago that was.
Yeah. There's just so much work to be done. And then finally, we got Cringe-Walker for last $5 for the evening. Thank you very much, my friend. September will be shaky, by the way. UK, France, and US reviewing bonds, reviewing bond values and such. Also, Biden's housing voucher for migrants expire. Chaos is coming. Yeah, well, buckle up, boys and girls, for September then.
If the housing vouchers are all expiring at that time, there could be a lot of instability in a lot of urban areas.
Could be a preemptive reason why the Trump administration is calling for the National Guard to be in Chicago, which apparently, the last I saw, it looks like they're actually going to do it. So we'll see.
Yeah, on that note is whether they do it or not, he's done an amazing job of making the whole opposition react to him.
Oh yes, that's very true.
No, that's the thing. Trump is the great man of the present moment. That again, your moral judgment of him can vary, right? But Trump is the great man of the present moment, and he really has taken and reoriented the entirety of American political life around his person, and by forcing your opponents, the left is not used to being reactionary like this. Right, yeah. That's why they're making.
It's mistakes.
They are flailing.
Change. Oh yeah, it is great. I mean, we covered last week, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago. I don't even remember at this point. These all run together at this point. But covering the summer meetings that the Dems had and stuff, and man, oh man, they've got fucking nothing right now, man.
Yeah, that convention of the last week was hilarious.
Oh yeah, they just have nothing.
They might what they're probably going to try to do is they're going to try to throw a Hail Mary under a new Bill Clinton presidency with Gavin Newsom. They're going to try to win back the tech people with Newsom. Newsom's already trying to make overtures to the Joe Rogan, the ephemeral Joe Rogan voter and stuff like that. The Dems are going to start trying to throw some bones to white people. That's the strategy they're going to pull in 28. And so the big question mark I see hanging over the scene right now is how will the momentum be kept up after Trump leaves? Is Vance going to do it? As far as I'm concerned, Vance is not exactly priced in yet. Maybe he's a hidden genius. Maybe he's just like a kind of, a more moderate Trump. Who knows? We don't know. Maybe Newsom will be greatly successful. Maybe he won't. We don't know.
Well, a lot of time left. So we'll see. And Cringe Rocker sends in one final super chat under the buzzer. So for $5, he says 20% of offices are vacant. Soon, same for housing, methinks. Yeah, well, let's hope.
Yeah, I know Elon talked about this about a year or so ago, because office real estate is a huge part of what sits on the balance sheets for lots of banks in the U.S. And I think in a lot of urban areas it's probably a lot higher than 20% on occupancy rate, because that's what I see. I see a lot higher numbers when I drive around, and it's to the point that they're starting to have the grass grow wild in a lot of these office parks, and maybe a third of their campuses are even used at the moment. So that's suddenly that's a dead asset sitting on a bank's balance sheet. It's like, what are they going to do with that? It's not going to be good for the bank. Not that I really care about them, but it's going to end up being bad to us for some degree.
Will you allow me one more quick little screed before we go? I know you want to get this wrapped up, but that reminds me of something. The grass growing in office parks. I just finished up reading a book about the 14th century, the 1300s. And one of the last lines of in one of the last, the last chapter, it was talking about the state of Paris, which used to be like the center of Europe. And now the half lived in suburbs of Paris, there were reports of wolves attacking people. Right. And so I'm wondering, like, as this demographic crisis that we've talked about earlier kind of hits us, and I think the future, there will just simply be less people on Earth than there are now. And like these, already you take these abandoned, office parks, these abandoned houses, all these other stuff, these suburbs that are, probably going to, the bank can't maintain them, the contractors can't maintain them, and they'll just be left there to rot. Maybe some will be lived in, some won't be. It'll kind of look like how Detroit used to look. I'm wondering if that's the future, even in major metropolitan areas that, for the last 100, 200 years have been just booming, growing. So I don't know, just a future vista for you to ponder.
All right, definitely things to contemplate for sure. So, well, that's going to wrap us up here for the evening, gentlemen. So, Pete, what do you have to promote, sir?
I just dropped my live stream from this past Sunday with Thomas was on for the first 45 minutes, and then myself and Martyr Maid went almost 3 hours, and there'll be enough there to piss everyone off. So check it out.
Yeah, no doubt. Mr. Fahrenheidt, do you have anything to report?
No, nothing. Just support the Old Glory Club.
All right, excellent. And then our special guest this evening, Mr. John Fieldhouse. Do you have anything to promote, my friend?
I've got a Substack that I need to start publishing at. See my stuff there. I do a bunch of stuff with Pete, and I do some stuff with other guys behind the scenes. And I do research work, so if somebody needs a researcher, I work cheap. So,
alrighty. For myself, I will be streaming on my own channel on Sunday. Some more just chill Sunday gaming stuff. So if you can check that out over there. Maybe I'll make an appearance on Rule Zero or Post Zero if the topic interests me. So take a look at that over the weekend. But as always, be sure to check out the Chapter House on Wednesdays and I was about to say Pony Express Radio on Mondays. I was like, no, that's ridiculous. No, American Spirits on Mondays. So definitely check out the great stuff that's going on over there. And we'll be back here next week. See you guys.